Now, restrictions on the sale of alcohol have been put in place in some parts of the Eastern Cape, but the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance says it's not realistic to rely on the goodwill of the public to control the consumption of alcohol. For more on this, I'm joined by SAPA Board Chairperson Maurice Smithers via our video link from Johannesburg. A very good afternoon to you and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Betsy. Thanks for having us.
Now let's just talk about why the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance is calling for alcohol sale restrictions beyond those localized lockdowns.
Well, I think the reason is that we believe government should be proactive and not reactive. It seems to us that the policy that they're using, which is to, as the minister has said, is that where they identify a hotspot, they will then implement restrictions, which is what they've done in Nelson Mandela and which they're considering doing now in the Garden Route. The challenge with that is that it's not taking into account that in other areas where there are no restrictions, that they could be developing into hotspots, and then you've already got a problem by the time that you actually then implement restrictions. So we think that at the beginning of the pandemic, government was proactive. They took steps to ensure that alcohol-related harm didn't become a problem for COVID, for hospital beds, and for the spread of the virus. And we think they should be taking that approach now as well.
And what would an alcohol-free South Africa then mean to the economy, especially when you consider the revenue that government generates from collecting sin taxes?
Well, I think there's two issues around that. And we don't like calling them sin taxes, actually, because sin taxes, it sounds like people who drink are somehow bad. They're somehow immoral. And we don't take a moral position on alcohol. We don't even have a prohibitionist policy on alcohol. We don't think bans are actually a good idea. Our position is about public health. Mm-hmm. But having said that, many studies have shown that the cost to the country of alcohol-related harm can be up to 3 times the amount of revenue that is generated through various means by the liquor industry in the country. So yes, everybody points to the fact that during the earlier ban, for example, mm-hmm. that government wasn't collecting on excise taxes. But at the same time, it wasn't costing the country a whole lot of money to actually deal with the consequences of alcohol-related harm. I mean, I just want to give you one tiny example. The minister spoke earlier on about people going into hospital with stab wounds. From the Western Cape, we understand that the average stab wound that a hospital has to deal with, a public hospital has to deal with, where somebody comes in, they get treated and they get released, they don't get hospitalized. That's 5,000 Rand. And that 5,000 Rand has to be carried by the state, because the person in a public hospital, generally people don't pay, or they pay a very minor amount. So that 5,000 Rand gets paid for by the state. So you multiply all the cases that go into hospitals over the week, particularly over weekends, as a result of alcohol-related harm, gunshot wounds, stab wounds, car crashes, as the minister said. That's a cost to the country. And there are many other ways in which it's a cost to the country. So one has to see the two things together. Obviously, we're concerned about the economy. That's why we're not calling for a ban, but we are calling for stronger restrictions around the country to encourage people and to create the conditions where people can actually comply and not use alcohol in a harmful way.
Well, can we just expand a bit then on those stronger restrictions? Are we talking about restrictions that we saw during level 2, where perhaps alcohol sales are allowed from, say, Monday to Thursday at specific times of the day?
Well, that's an option. I mean, I'll tell you the couple of things that we've actually been proposing. One is, I think we should bear in mind, by the way, before I talk about the measures, we should bear in mind that in the festive season, mm-hmm. there are 2 phenomena that happen every year. And that is that people drink a hell of a lot. And the other is that people travel a lot, mm-hmm. because it's a holiday period. So that's going to happen this year. We know that. But the second thing about this year is that this is the first time since March, since the pandemic began, that people are really able to go on holiday en masse, because we missed Easter, we missed July. So we're going to have more people on the road. Plus also, people are going to be celebrating, and in many ways, they're going to be celebrating not just the festive season, but kind of celebrating the end of a tough year. We've all had a tough year. So the likelihood is people are going to be drinking even more than they normally do. And both of those things are a recipe for potentially serious problems. So the proposals we've made in relation to that is one that they should introduce right now a reduction in the breath and blood content level for drivers. At the moment, there is a road traffic amendment bill facing in Parliament, which is going to do that anyway, but it won't go through before the end of the year. So use the Disaster Management Act to do it for now. To protect people on the road and to protect, people say, well, what's being on the road got to do with, what's traffic crashes got to do with COVID? Well, if you can imagine, if somebody's driving and they have an accident, suddenly there's a whole lot of people who suddenly get drawn to that place, medical personnel, police officers, and so on. That becomes a potential place where the virus can be spread unnecessarily. The second thing is we believe that there should be a ban on all special offers on alcohol at this time. Mm-hmm. If we don't want people to drink excessively, and government is saying that, even the liquor industry is saying that, then if we don't want people to drink excessively, why make special offers available where people can buy more booze for less? It doesn't make any sense. The other thing is banning alcohol advertising except at point of sale during this time. Again, because why encourage people to drink through advertising when in fact you want them to cut back? We've said keep nightclubs closed, and also don't allow any of these huge events. I mean, in the Eastern Cape, they had an event the other day with 1,500 people, no masks, no social distancing. And government has recognized that those are potential super spreaders. The key one, though, and this is the one that we believe is very important, is that around the country on the 15th and 16th of December, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 26th of December, and 31st of December, and 1st and 2nd of January, those are all the days and nights on which people are going to be doing like the big bash celebrations. Mm-hmm. And that's therefore going to be the biggest risk. So we're saying government must just say that on those days, all on consumption outlets must close at 6 p.m. So in other words, you're not saying people can't drink alcohol during the day. You're not saying they can't buy alcohol, but from 6 p.m. at night, on consumption outlets must close. And then people can go and drink at home, where they can be in the company of their families, or maybe a small gatherings of friends and so on, but not actually going to venues where there's a likelihood of people drinking and then not adhering to the regulations. And I suppose our message is to people, surely the sacrifice this festive season is worth it to make sure that as many of us as possible survive to be able to celebrate the festive season in 2021.
A very good point that you have made there. And just lastly, has government responded at all to any of the proposals that you've made?
Not directly, which is a bit frustrating, to be honest, because, we're an NGO, we're a non-government organization. We have no particular, we're doing what we are doing in the interest of the public health of the country. So we do communicate with government. We send proposals through. We have actually made direct submissions even to the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Health, at one of which the head of the MAC, Professor Karim, was present. But we don't get direct responses. In other words, if we send information through, government doesn't respond and say, thank you very much. This is what this is what we've decided to do. So basically, the only way we will know, I suppose, whether government is taking seriously what we say is by what they do. And so far, we are not we're not comfortable that they're only going for hotspots, because we think it is a good thing to do, because perhaps it will send a message to the rest of the country that if you don't actually comply with the regulations, you could become a hotspot. And if you become a hotspot, there will be restrictions. Maybe that's a positive message coming out of this particular strategy. But we think government should take a leaf out of many other countries in the world. In Europe at the moment, the first response when they've had the new surge is to close down on consumption liquor outlets, because liquor is seen as a problem. It's even in the design. I mean, what's funny when people say, why are we using the disaster, the pandemic to deal with alcohol? It's not that we are doing that. If you read the Disaster Management Act, there's a clause in the Disaster Management Act that specifically says that if there's a state of disaster, one of the things that government can do is to suspend or limit the sale, dispensing, or transportation of alcohol beverages in the disaster-stricken area. So it's not that some minister or the committee sucked this idea out of the sky.
It actually is in the act.
It's actually in the act. It's in the act.
We're going to have to leave it there, Mr. Smithers. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and for sharing your thoughts and sentiments and those proposals with us. That was Maurice Smithers, who is the board chairperson of the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance.